There's Judge Caudle. You want to ask Judge Caudle to go ahead and make some comments? Yeah, there's Judge Anderson. John?
Yeah, he's there.
Is it okay for Judge Caudle to go ahead
Sure.
and make
Yeah,
comments?
yeah.
Okay.
His camera's
Listen,
on.
I think it's just the presentation, the entire process has been incredible for me to participate in and watch. I have never seen this kind of community engagement before. I have never seen the effort put into getting this kind of community engagement before. And considering the COVID-19 interruption, I think it's been, I think you've done a remarkable job, John. Your entire team has. I have been sitting here texting back and forth between people while we've been watching this about how fantastic the whole concept has come together. It's elegant. It reflects what goes on in our community, and I think it's a great jumping off point for us to sit there and start developing the region and excite investors about coming here. And I truly appreciate the fact that you guys honored the local culture here and also found a way to try to introduce us to the future, which is people coming to our area for adventure tourism.
Thank you, Judge Caudle. Judge Anderson?
Yeah, I'm very excited as well. I think I expressed to a group earlier today, coming from an agricultural background, I have a strong appreciation for our natural resources and trying to do things in a sustainable manner and be able to use what God give us, but not exploit them to the point to where we exhaust them. And I think initially, whatever side of the coin on, I think our public needs to be aware that our region is growing, and particularly the Slate area, and it's highly unlikely, I mean, almost to the point of not likely at all, that this site would not be developed. So I think, you know, nothing against the current landowner, what I expressed. I have never once had a conversation with him about his desires or what he would like to do with that. So I think minus, unfortunately, not having planning and zoning to actually have a seat at the table, not only myself, the other judges, but our community members to have input and see it be implemented. And I think if we're content that this is going to site potentially be developed in the future, that this would be the most sustainable, environmentally friendly, as well as community friendly in the form of revenue and what it would bring to our area. So I think this is a much more viable option that our public can appreciate. And so I've been appreciative to be a part of these conversations. Thank all those that have partnered with us and put the input. And I think seeing the project morph from what we originally saw to what it is now shows that much of that has been taken into consideration and implemented. And so very excited about what this could mean to our region. I kind of oftentimes likened it, naturally on scale, it's quite a bit different, but what Toyota done to Scott County in that area, what this could mean to our Eastern Kentucky region, I think it could give us we could reverse some of the brain drain and resources that we bleed out every time. So to be able to retain some of that talent and resources here would be much welcomed.
Thank you, Judge Anderson. Judge Stiltner of Menifee County?
Yeah, I agree with what both the other judges had to say about this. Of course, I want to thank Stantec. Y'all done a great job of engaging the public through this advisory board, as well as having these virtual meetings that we're all becoming accustomed to now. I know we had a lot of trouble getting folks on early on, but again, that goes with technology. And one of the things I see in all this, I just appreciate the vision that we have here to make the Natural Bridge area, our 4 counties, a destination resort. There not being one in Kentucky, that alone speaks volumes. I appreciate the folks who had some foresight that are from Eastern Kentucky that wanted to see this resort move forward and to come to fruition. And of course, we need this plan. As you've heard the other judge talk about, there's no planning and zoning. without a plan, anything can go there. So I'm happy to see us pull together a plan that'll be sustainable for the future, that's economic, that have an economic impact in our area, and not just an economic impact, but it will be environmentally friendly to our area here. We have a beautiful area. We live in a beautiful area. We have great people. We have a great workforce, but we need jobs for that workforce. And what I see with this destination resort, when it comes to fruition, is we will have jobs for the people who live and work, so they can work here in the area where we live at. I see nothing but good for the businesses that are already there. You bring in another 500,000 people to an area, to their businesses, it can do nothing but help to grow their business. This resort won't take away from it, and I think that was early on. Those were some of the things that folks were afraid of. I really do love the entrance to this piece of property over the Mountain Parkway. Seeing that today, that'll have a huge impact on folks coming to our area. Also, again, I want to thank the other judges. You know, none of us live in a bubble. We all need each other, and we need this economic development in our 4-county area. Thanks again, Stantec, and Dave, let me say thank you to you. You've done a great job moving all of this forward and keeping it together. Thanks.
Well, thank you, judges. You've all been great to work with. This might be a historic moment. 3 county judges in adjoining counties agreeing with each other. Somebody needs to write a history of Kentucky and note that. No, that is great, because there's always a little competition, you know, a little rivalry here and there, but you all been terrific to work with. I just want to mention to everyone on the call that Congressman Hal Rogers and Congressman Andy Barr issued a joint statement today. Let me just read this statement to you about this cooperative effort and this being a roadmap for the future. They said, "This is an opportunity for the Red River Gorge to serve as a natural gateway to Eastern Kentucky from population centers in Lexington, Louisville, Cincinnati, and beyond. Regional attractions ranging from elk viewing to rafting and from wildlife excursions to camping can all grow as Eastern Kentucky emerges as a popular destination, tourist destination." So I thought that was awfully great of them. They've been encouraging all along. Let me make just a few comments about our next steps, and then we'll open it up for John and others to answer. The judges would stay online here. There might be a question for you gentlemen too from the chat room. Red River Economic Development, RRED, had a board meeting today, and they took a couple of actions. One is they adopted some new bylaws because they had previously agreed with the Kentucky Chamber Foundation, which gave birth to RRED, that RRED was ready to stand on its own legs. And so as of midnight tomorrow night, September 30th, RRED will be its own standalone, independent, nonprofit, charitable, legal entity. Same board, same 5 business leaders, same 4 county judges or their appointees will serve to coordinate things down the road. We don't know what the future of that group's going to be. We've challenged them to stay together and even spin off, well, the local advisory board to spin off and become a 4-county voice for the region. But we'll just have to see how that goes moving forward. The board of RRED also voted to approve an extension to the option. Ian Teal, the property owner who's on the call tonight, has been terrific to work with. He's just been a real gentleman. You know, he's a cabin guy. He wants to build cabins, but he believes in this bigger vision. He's excited about it. He hopes it can come about. And so granting us another 6-month option gets us some time. And that is, that's critical right now. So Red River Economic Development will continue. We will shift now into a mode. And by the way, I've been a consultant to the Kentucky Chamber for this past year because the Chamber had just gotten this $1 million grant. So I was invited to stay and kind of coordinate things for the year. But as of midnight tomorrow night, I'll switch to volunteer status. I love this project. I'm excited about it. And I have the luxury in retirement of taking on a projects that I want to, and that I negotiate with my wife. And so I'm going to stick with this for the next 6 months at least to serve as a project manager as long as our RED wants me to. I will say too, one of the points that we had a conversation with some reporters this morning, the Lexington Herald Leader and WEKU, and one of the things that was pointed out was that there is nothing like this within a 3-hour drive time of Slade, Kentucky. The Greenbrier, I think, is 4.5. French Lick is 3. Blackberry Farm in Tennessee is 3.5. So this is admittedly a higher end resort, a 4.5-star resort, which will draw a different type of visitor to the Gorge. And they will spend money. And people who want that kind of accommodation have certain standards, one of which is that the development be an eco resort, one that is ecologically friendly and suited to the environment in a sustainable way. So that's encouraging. We're going to spend the next 6 months going out to investors and developers. I don't know whether we'll issue an RFP, a request for proposals for developers around the country. We've got a meeting coming up here pretty soon with a small group of business people to decide how do we advertise this? How do we take this plan and put it out there in the marketplace? $135 million resort. Obviously, it'll take quite a bit to put together the package to make that happen. But we're committed to trying to do that. The business projections look positive. We think it would be a positive business investment for someone who is comfortable in this kind of an industry. So we'll be taking that message out. Someone recently from our local advisory board asked, would it be possible for local people to invest? And we haven't structured anything yet, but I would hope so. I would hope that it would be a mix of people. My guess is most of it will come from people who are from the region and have a loyalty to the region, even if they have succeeded in business in Lexington, Louisville, Los Angeles, or wherever. So that's what we're going to be focused on here in the future, and working with the elected officials to try to piece something together. I used to say at the beginning of this 8 months ago, I said I thought this was probably a 50-50 chance that we could pull off the resort as we had envisioned it. This plan comes up with one that is not exactly as we had envisioned. Some things have been taken off the table. For example, a gaming option that was basically taken off the table in one of the first meetings of the local advisory board. But other things like a distillery, a microbrewery, things like that have been added. I think that's very encouraging. But that's kind of where we're going to try to make it together, try to put it together. Oh, what I was going to say, I thought it was a 50-50 chance. With this plan in place and with the public response that we've gotten, the positive encouragement, I think I've moved it more toward the 60-40 now. And who knows? I mean, we got a lot of hard work to make something like this become a reality. So with that, John, why don't we look at the chat room and see what, one person asked if the slides would be put up on our website, and the answer is yes, right?
Yeah, we can add the presentation, and we also will have all of the documents that fed into the presentation. So everything that you saw in the presentation is actually pulled from the other documents that you'll be able to access on redriverky.com. And to answer one of the questions that was posted in the chat, yes, we do have our environmental report posted there. We have our transportation and infrastructure reports. So you will be able to see those. And we can put the recording of this presentation, like the others, we can post that as well. So those actually should be available now on the website, but you know, don't rush there because we still are going to answer some more questions.
Oh, John, we might want to mention that as we were experimenting with and test running the website a while ago, the slides that he presented are presented in kind of a 2-page spread. In other words, you had the legend on one side and the map of the site on the other, and you had all these numbers that corresponded to certain features. Those are 1 page, one right after the other, so it's going to be a little awkward. It has to do with how you download it, I think, but we'll fix that in the next few days. The material's all there, it's just in a slightly different format.
Yeah, okay. So then, yeah, I did want to point out though about the environmental study that was done. Is that's a very high level study that was appropriate for the conceptual level of planning that we were doing for this this project. When it comes to the point of doing final design on this project, there'll be a much more detailed environmental and historical study, archaeological study done on that site, depending on who's doing the development. Obviously, if it's done you know, as a series of cabins and not a resort, then the outcome would be slightly different. So then I wanted to get to a few other questions. There was one about the idea of the 4-county tourism boards and their cooperation, and that was something that we spent a lot of time on, and is talked about in the documents, both the branding and marketing strategy and the overall tourism strategy. And we really feel like that there's an opportunity for those 4-county tourism boards to combine efforts and possibly through some formal agreements share some funding so that they're not duplicating efforts so much on particularly on their marketing efforts. And so that goes everything from what they do in print materials, but also their web design, how they participate in conferences when they start happening, things like that, they all kind of do the same thing, but they're all really promoting the same area. That, you know, when they all recognize that when visitors come to the Red River Gorge, they don't care if they're in Lee County or Powell County or Wolfe County or Menifee County. They just know they're going to the Red River Gorge. And so by pooling those resources and allowing staff to focus on different things, they can be a lot more efficient in their work. And so that is definitely one of the opportunities that we recognized through our project. There was a question on the chat about why not donate 80% to Kentucky Nature Preserve or the Forest Service to keep and manage it protected. That is potentially an option for the property owner. We didn't go so far in our work to recommend that for the resort property, but it's definitely an option and may be a necessary, or maybe an appealing option for whoever the owner is of the property to do that on multiple levels. Let's see. There was one question about jobs and would they be year-round. We recognize that as a a resort in Eastern Kentucky, that the amount of visitation would likely drop some in the wintertime, which would mean there would be potentially fewer visitors to the resort. But one of the things that is important to note is the plan for the resort is the idea that it would have, to begin with, 10,000 square feet of meeting space, and would allow the opportunity for more conferences and events to come to the area in those off times and bring more visitors to the region throughout the year. And that should help mitigate some of the seasonality of employment. The other thing that does, though, is that also allows some of the nearby restaurants and businesses to retain staff throughout the year at a higher level, because they'll have more customers potentially throughout the winter months. Let's see. There was a question about, in the absence of planning and zoning, what kind of oversight there might be for the resort. I know, Judge Anderson, we've talked about this a lot. I don't know if you wanted to address that one.
Yeah, well, of course, I've been a proponent of planning and zoning, and I've seen several questions in regards to that. And what I've encouraged people, you know, since I've been in office, I've been a proponent, but it's up to us to have some support from the community, because we also, no one judge on here can make that happen by themselves. We all have courts, and so I think letting your magistrate and those people in the court know that there's support of it. And I think he brought up a very valid point. I know Dario's touched on it a lot from Miguel's. We want to protect our citizens that's been here too. We don't want them to be forced out because of rising tax rates or whatever until they choose to realize that profit and would sell potentially. So I think one benefit of this, and I know in our particular county, we've had several issues with landfills and rock quarries and such. And I think our people are starting to wake up that we are growing. And if we want to have a say in what that growth looks like, then we've got to take a hard look in making sure those things happen. And so that kind of on the planning and zoning, I guess, as of where we are now, naturally, potentially this resort could happen much quicker than we could get what we want implemented. I think touching on that and talking, Dave can maybe better touch on it, but the TIF districts and things, I think we still have the potential to use that to leverage a lot of the outcomes and the project that's laid out here. And what I've encouraged, I think that's another benefit of having this project versus a private individual just building cabins or land contract type things. I think if to make this project viable or likely, any investor going to invest this would rely heavily upon the potential tax incentives, which would take naturally the local and state government to be supportive of those. So I think if we can get there, we can very much hopefully dictate that the plan or very similar plan to what you all have is laid out.
I've allowed Jim Parsons from our team, he's with KMK Consulting, he lives in Northern Kentucky, I've given him access to speak. And Jim, I don't know if you wanted to give a quick overview of how those incentives work, because there's a question about how they can be dedicated to the plan or for the project and other things. So if you can just take a minute to give us an idea of how that works.
Be glad to, and I'd like to echo what Judge Anderson just said. In the granting of some of the incentives, especially the TIF incentives that might be available for the project, there's conditions that can be placed on the developer, and possibly then the TIF incentives or some of the incentives could flow, but only on condition the developer complies with what they have agreed to do. And so there are some ways to do that and put some conditions on a developer and relative to that by the use of the incentives. Most of the incentives we're talking about here are that would be available for the project, would be available for basically to reimburse the cost of the project or some infrastructure costs related to the project in the immediate area. So I saw the chat question, but the TIF incentives and the tourism development incentives, at least, are the major state incentives that could be available for this. And those particular incentives are, one, self-generating, which means that the project has to generate the taxes, and they don't impact any existing taxes at all. So the project would have to generate its own incentive, in a sense, from either the TIF or the sales tax recovery. But again, those particular incentives would be for the resort or to pay costs associated with the project, or again, the infrastructure that might be needed related to the project. Now, there could be some a little bit broader use of some of those incentives, but they're really for the resort. There are other revenues, though, that would be, or not incentives for the project, but just some additional taxes, tourism dollars that would be generated, additional tourism dollars, not only to the local community, but also to the state because of room taxes and things like that. Those could be utilized a little broader and actually could promote a more of a regional approach to tourism and things like that. And so I think those are some examples of how there are certain incentives that could be used by the resort to make the financing work, but there's also additional tax revenues that would be generated that have nothing to do with the incentive. They're just the natural taxes would be created by the project that could be available on a much broader basis and used to promote other things within the area.
Thanks, Jim. So there were a couple questions about the U.S. Forest Service and how they're going to handle the impact on the gorge. And so I wanted to address that real quick. There's a couple things there that we tried to be sensitive to. One is that we recognize that there's a lot of traffic on the Gorge Loop, that there's parking problems at most of the trailheads. And so one of the things we tried to do is how do we spread people out? And so that was one of the main premises of the tourism strategy, was highlighting opportunities for new attractions outside of the heart of the gorge. And we talked about a few of those earlier. But we talked about the horse trails in Menifee County and the opportunity for a primitive horse camp and trails that you can ride all the way from the southwestern part of Menifee County all the way up to the White Sulphur Horse Camp in Bath County, potentially with a stop about halfway just outside of Frenchburg. We've recognized there are some opportunities for trailheads that are on the outside of the geologic area and the Clifton Wilderness where you could add some trailheads and people could start their hike from there and hike into those areas rather than putting the strain on the areas along the Red River Gorge loop. And then I guess one of the things that we didn't talk about, but that is an important piece of what we're talking about, is the opportunity at this point in time for national park designation for the geological area and the Clifty Wilderness. And we understand that there'll be varying opinions on that one. But some of the main benefits that we saw for that were that some people call the Red River Gorge the land of designations. We heard that from a few people. And that the reason for that is that there's not only the geological area designation in the Clifty Wilderness, that's also a national natural landmark. It's a national archaeological district. There's a wild and scenic river area, a national scenic byway. When you combine all those things, what you end up with is an area that has about the same amount of protections as a national park, but that doesn't have the funding of a national park. And so the Forest Service is asked to manage that area much like a national park would be managed, but yet they don't get the funding to do so. And so we feel like that, that being a national park and the funding that comes with that wouldn't necessarily change the access, but it would change the ability for whoever manages that area to do the things that need to be done to effectively manage it and potentially offer some additional programming that the Forest Service just currently doesn't have the funding to do. Let's see, trying to look at my list to make sure we get to all of the questions. Dave, there was, you kind of talked about it earlier. There was a question about timeline and how soon we think this, the resort might happen. I'll start though before you do that. I think anything that's in the tourism strategy is something, are things that could happen. Some of them could happen immediately. Some of them are already underway. And so their timelines are pretty close. And I think with the, you know, with things like the Pine Ridge Industrial Park, with the Kentucky Wildlands Cultural Center and Hazard Community College, you may be 5 years away on that. You already have a shuttle operator, a private entity, who's trying to do a variety of type shuttle services in the area, but could really benefit from the ability to expand that service and make it a bit more often, so that it's more beneficial for people, rather than having to wait too long between rides, because that's a, you know, the longer you wait, the less likely you are to use the shuttle. So if we could have more shuttles, then people wouldn't feel they need as much need to drive into the loop. So did you already address the timeline, you think, Dave, on the resort?
Just the 6 months ahead of us to try to put together the business proposition and a group of investors and or a developer. Beyond that, I wouldn't want to speculate. You know, we're in for a longer haul, but we don't know what that'll be, how successful we'll be. People have asked, will COVID affect the timeline? I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know. In one sense, you know, we're in an uncertain economic time, clearly, in our country. And certain hospitality sectors, restaurants, hotels, are kind of frozen up to some extent. On the other hand, the Red River Gorge is, from what I understand, pretty busy right now because people want to get out and they're feeling cooped up. So how all that plays into it, we don't know. But people who do developments like this and invest in developments like this, I think it's fair to say, are in for the long haul. They're not looking at a 6-month return. They're looking at, what will this mean in 5 years? Where will it be in 10 years? So in that sense, I think we could be optimistic that a good business deal is a good business deal, even though the economy has ebbs and flows.
So there was a question about the infrastructure and Slade and getting ahead of that. And so, you know, in part of putting together the cost of the infrastructure for the resort, we identified some infrastructure upgrades that would be necessary, not just for the resort, also potentially for Natural Bridge State Resort Park and areas in between, particularly as it relates to water and wastewater. We all know that the broadband is there. It's expanding to other parts of that 4-county area, but at least in terms of the Slade area, that has gotten there. The wastewater treatment plant there needs to be upgraded, regardless of whether or not the resort happens, because the state park would likely be coming onto that system. and there are multiple funding sources that could be used for that. Community development block grants are a possibility. Kentucky Infrastructure Authority loans are a possibility as well. And those are things that could potentially happen ahead of time, not only to prepare for the resort, but to allow for additional development in Slade.
Hey, John,
Yes.
could I answer one from Laura Gregory? She's asking where the funding would come from for the next 6 months for the options on the property. And that will come from private donations. I'll have to pass the hat among the business people who started this whole project. The other day we were on a call and raised a little over 20,000 just on the call, but it'll take 60,000. The good news is that the owner of the property has agreed that if we end up purchasing the property, those payments will go toward the purchase price. So that's a good thing. And John Elmer Whitaker, known for Whitaker Bank, is on the call with us tonight. He has a huge presence in Powell County and started his banking career there. He's made some good comments about the need for cooperation. Can you bring him onto the screen and maybe he could mention some of that live to the group tonight?
Yes. Sorry, I got to scroll through everybody to find him. So here we go.
Elmer starts with an E. I shouldn't insult our world-renowned consultants that way, should I?
All right, Elmer, you're on. Let me see. You need to unmute. There we go. I think you're ready. As soon as you unmute yourself.
Yeah, he's muted. Elmer, can you hear us?
I think so. Can you hear me, Dave?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. And I think I'm having some technical difficulties here.
We're hearing you just fine, but we don't see you yet.
Okay. Ultimately, this is an incredible opportunity for the region, as it is a monumental task of cooperation. And I think everyone needs to realize that and be very patient and appreciative of that it will take local, national, state, private funding to make a project of this size a possibility. It is a wonderful job that's been done by the local advisory board working in collaboration with Stantec. I truly am just amazed and applaud the efforts that's been done on that. It is such a wonderful concept that we now have to go out and find the developer to take on a task like this. It is the hope of the Red River Economic Development Group that this is a hybrid funded effort, that there is a developer that wants to invest in our region, but at the same time, we do hope that there is an element of local investment to give our local folks an opportunity to invest in this project. But one of the greatest things about what the advisory group and Stantec has accomplished is it's such a great combination of economic incentive for the community and the region, while also being environmentally friendly. It is a model for future projects. I'm very excited and proud of that for the region, because it upholds everything that we love about this region while creating opportunities for the future. But at the same time, it's not in direct competition with any existing small business owners. And it actually just gives opportunity for the small businesses in the area, those that exist today and those that are yet to come, a great opportunity to a new group of people that will visit the area as part of this tourism initiative.
Thank you, Elmer. Other questions, John?
Yeah, there was another one from Miranda about some of the things going on in Slade. One of the things I neglected to mention was that we also looked at the transportation piece, and one of the things that we were concerned about was traffic at that intersection just north of the Slade interchange, and we did a traffic study. Len Harper from our Lexington office worked on that and estimated the amount of vehicles that the resort would generate. And because of the current volumes there, we weren't actually projecting to get the traffic volumes up to a level that would warrant changes from the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet based on the amount of vehicles. However, we also recognize that we anticipate additional pedestrian activity in the area, and think that they'd be a good idea to have some sidewalks through that area in addition to the trail, and that when you do that, making that intersection a three-way stop really makes sense. It helps to control traffic a little bit, makes it a little safer for pedestrians. It might be possible at some point in time to do a roundabout there, but we'd have to study that a bit more before we make that recommendation, because there's not a lot of space there between those off-ramps, on-ramps, and in that intersection. The other thing that we recognize as a possibility for that Slade area is kind of a carrot for new and current business owners in terms of the signage that they use and how they do their lighting and things. It's possible to create some sort of grant program that's eligible to business owners that follow a certain set of guidelines for how you'd like that corridor to look. And with the potential for the resort and the additional money that would come from that transient tax, the hotel tax, there could be enough money to support a program like that, among other things. We estimate that the resort itself could generate well over $500,000 a year in that transient tax, and could hopefully support a variety of programs, not only in the Slade area, but in that four-county Red River Gorge region. So let's see. I think we've gotten.
Miranda had a comment. If you wanted to.
I was addressing her question actually in that when I was talking just now. It was her question about the the interchange. Yeah, and we do understand that right now it's bad because the parkway is closed and it's kind of difficult to get through there, and sometimes turning can take a long time. When I was over there a few weeks ago, that was definitely an issue. And so, right now that three-way stop would probably help a lot, because I think depending on where you're coming from, it might be hard to make the turn you want to make because of the amount of traffic. So that definitely is something that we think would be a good idea regardless of traffic, but for that, making that a comfortable place for pedestrians. Let's see. I think we've covered the current questions. I'll scroll back through just to make sure.
Someone asked about flood control. Michelle.
Okay. So there's one of the things that we put in there. There's right now there's some additional funding from FEMA for hazard mitigation projects. It's the BRIC program, Building Resilience, Resilient Infrastructure in Communities, and that money allocated by Congress is more money than we've seen for hazard mitigation projects in a long time. And as a start, one of the things they fund are things called a project scoping study. And so you would start with that study to identify if you have the ability to make some changes to mitigate flooding, and put together the benefit cost analysis that would be necessary to then apply for another grant to fund that project. And so there's a couple things that are happening there. We know that it floods in several areas just on the south side of the Mountain Parkway as you come from Slade up towards the state park, and we don't know exactly what's causing those. And so that scoping study would help us determine what's causing that flooding. And we know that sometimes there's nothing you can do about the floodplain. If you build in the floodplain, then it's always going to be there. But it's possible that there are some things that could be done to limit that flooding. and that could potentially involve where the river goes underneath the parkway. There could be some connection with the lake up at the state park and some other things in between. And so the idea is that study would look at the river through there, see if there are some opportunities to help that, and then put together an additional grant for project funding if that study finds that it's possible to mitigate that. So I know that was a long answer, but you wouldn't know exactly how you would mitigate the flooding until you do that study. Right now, we would just make some guesses based on limited information.
Hey, John, Michelle had asked early in the program, why not donate the 80% of the resort property to a Kentucky nature preserve or the Forest Service to manage and keep it protected? I have had a discussion with Diane Osborne. I think she's the executive director of the Nature Conservancy. And just to get acquainted with how they do those sorts of things, you know, a property owner, and this would ultimately be up to a developer, could donate land to a conservancy and get tax benefits, or they could donate a certain conservation easement. In other words, a negotiated process, and let's say the owner says, well, we want people hiking to be able to access that property, but otherwise it would be restricted and protected. That's one level of easement. So apparently that's up for the negotiation process as to what kind of easement a developer might give to a conservancy, and therefore what kind of tax benefit there would be. I think Judge Anderson has something to say about that.
Dave, I might be a little different than other groups. I can't speak for them. Naturally, we do some projects with the U.S. Forest Service and state lands, but I have a little different perspective. I think if you look at Eastern Kentucky, if you look at why some of the developments are, if you look at the land holdings that our federal government and state entities hold now that are not in our tax system, that actually in many instances go contrary, I'd be much more favorable to that Nature Conservancy be granted to the 4 counties and us have some kind of covenants that we abided or dictated what could be happening there. In many instances, we have very little say in what goes on, and in many cases, there's been our public's been excluded from those properties in many aspects. So I don't think we give away our kitchen sink. I think I would be much more comfortable with my fellow judges and myself and our courts, and maybe such as the advisory board, been a committee that was set up to govern what we'd want to happen within that zone, if that would be a possibility.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, yeah. John, we've been an hour and a half here. I had a little confusion at the beginning of people wanting to get on the call, but I know people want to go and make some popcorn before the presidential debate tonight, so we need to give them a break. Feel free to shoot questions to me or to John. My email address, starting Thursday, my personal email address, I'm going to be pulling away from my chamber email address, is davida53ky@gmail.com. davida53ky@gmail.com. So, any closing comments from the judges? Anyone? We probably didn't get to answer all the questions, but most of them. So thank you all for your patience tonight. Yes.
I would like to say one more thing, Dave.
Sure.
You alluded to it. We're getting ready to watch a presidential debate, and you'll witness the division. And I think that's another reward of being a part of this project. If you look at the 2 judges sitting there, they're opposite party. I think if you look at the congressman, Senate majority leader that we talked to, and the best of my recollection, you correct them, party was never brought up. So don't be discouraged. If you look at the local government, I think citizens and the way we work within our state government, that's not the issue that they would have you to believe it is. And parties never got in the way of any time I've had a conversation with either of these fellow judges. They've done many things for us, and I would be willing to do the same. And both Lee and Menifee County are very well represented, and y'all are lucky to have the 2 gentlemen sitting here with us tonight.
Great. Well, that's it. I'd say it's going to be tough to Judge Stiltner.
I would say ditto to what James had to say. Again, I just want to say to Stan Tech and the folks who worked on this, you've put forth an excellent project. I look forward to working with these other judges to see where we can work together to make tourism what tourism needs to be in our 4 counties to help the economic development and the job situation here. Thank you.
All right. Judge Caldwell?
Well, of course, the rookie goes after the 2 pros here. But yeah, I have I'm the newest guy to this mix in terms of county judges. But I can echo what Judge Anderson and Judge Stiltner said, that politics has never played a role in anything we've done. We get on the phone, we talk all the time, we give each other hard times, ask a lot of questions. It's about community. It's about dealing with issues that have haunted us for decades, if not generations. And yeah, so there's some positive things going on, and the key here is all politics is local. And one of my biggest issues is a lot of times we look for somebody else to fix the problems. Well, this is one time that I can say, watching this whole process, the people engaged want to fix the problems. And that's from the business leaders right down to the rock climbers and the hikers. And it's exciting. And I think we hold the answers to our own future. And that's proven here.
Great. Well, I have told the local advisory board that at least monthly, we will give them an update of where things are, because there'll probably be a pretty long quiet spell here now as we beat the bushes to try to find folks who would put their money behind a project like this. So don't expect it overnight, but we will be posting updates occasionally on the website, redriverky.com. So look for tonight the reports. I mean, it's a wealth of reports beyond what we've heard tonight that are now available on the website. Share those with your friends and neighbors, and we'll be posting updates when there is something to report on that website. And I think there's a way there where you can actually sign up and get automated updates when something is posted. So feel free to go to that and put in your email address or whatever is required. John, thank you very much. Judges, thank you all. Elmer Whitaker, thank you. And we look forward to working with you as we move forward. See you later.
Thank you all.
So on.